It was a dry and scorching afternoon, the kind where the sun seemed to hang too close to the earth, and the air itself shimmered with heat. A lonely dirt road stretched endlessly, winding its way through hills and valleys, with no signs of life in sight. Along this path walked three men, their faces lined with dust, their steps heavy, and their spirits low. Each carried his own burden, unseen but heavy as stone, etched into their hearts. The first man, Thomas, was a farmer from a distant land. Once his fields were lush and his barns full, but drought had turned his fertile land to ash. With no harvest, no family, and no home, Thomas had taken to the road, hoping to find a place where his hands could find purpose again. The second man, Elias, was a merchant who once dealt in fine silk and spices. Wealth and comfort had been his constant companions, until deceit from his closest friends robbed him of all he had. With nothing but a small bundle of tattered clothes, he too wandered, seeking something even he could not name. The third man, Simeon, was the quietest of them all, a man of noble birth. His life had been one of privilege and power, but false accusations had stripped him of his honor and cast him into exile. Now, with nothing but his dignity barely intact, he journeyed with the others, unsure of where his feet would lead him. The three men, though strangers at first, had come together by chance on this road, bound by their shared misery and the faintest flicker of hope that perhaps the path would lead them somewhere, anywhere, better. As they walked, the hills grew steeper, and the sun seemed angrier with every passing moment. Finally, in the distance, they spotted a lone figure slumped beneath a crooked tree. From afar, the figure appeared motionless, and the three men hesitated. Could it be a bandit, waiting to ambush us? Thomas asked, his voice wary. Or perhaps someone who needs our help, Elias replied, though his tone carried doubt. Simeon, with his noble upbringing, said nothing at first, but then added, "We should not assume evil where we have seen no evidence of it. Let us go closer." And so, cautiously, they approached the figure. It was an old man, frail and gaunt, his face weathered by time and hardship. His clothes were ragged, and his sandals worn through to his blistered feet. He looked up at them with eyes that seemed to hold the weight of centuries. "Who are you, old man?" Thomas asked, keeping a safe distance. The man smiled faintly and spoke in a voice both weak and commanding. "I am but a traveler, like yourselves. My name is Micah." Elias frowned. "A traveler? What are you doing in this desolate place all alone?" Micah chuckled softly, a sound like dry leaves rustling. "I have been waiting." "Waiting?" Simeon repeated, his brow furrowed. "For what?" "For you," Micah said simply. The three men exchanged glances. Uneasy now, Thomas stepped forward. "What do you mean? You know nothing of us." Micah's eyes seemed to pierce through them as he spoke. "I know more than you think. Thomas, you have labored tirelessly, yet you feel abandoned by God because your fields no longer yield fruit. Elias, you trusted too easily, and now you curse your own kindness, blaming the Lord for your misfortune. And Simeon, prideful Simeon, you mourn not only the loss of your title, but the respect of men, as though their judgment were greater than his." The men froze, stunned. How could this stranger know their names, their stories? "Who are you?" Elias demanded, his voice rising with fear. "I told you," Micah said calmly. "I am a traveler, and I was sent to guide you." "Guide us where?" Simeon asked, his skepticism clear. "To the truth," Micah replied. Though hesitant, the three men sat beneath the tree with Micah. The old man offered them water from a small flask, and as they drank, he began to speak, weaving a story unlike any they had heard before. Micah's tale began with a king, a mighty ruler who lived in a palace of gold and ruled with wisdom and justice. Yet for all his power, the king had no heir. Desperate to find someone worthy of his throne, he devised a test. He sent messengers to every corner of his kingdom with this decree: "Let all who believe they are worthy come to the palace, but bring with you nothing but what your heart holds most dear." Hundreds came, some bearing nothing but their arrogance, others with their fear, and still others with false humility. The king watched them all but found none worthy. Finally, three arrived, each carrying something unusual. The first brought a stone, rough and ordinary, but he said it represented his labor and perseverance. The second brought a seed, small and fragile, yet full of potential and faith. The third brought a broken chain, a symbol of his freedom from pride and his submission to God's will. The king was moved by their offerings and their sincerity. He told them, "The stone, the seed, and the chain are all worthy gifts, but they are incomplete alone. Together, they represent the foundation of a kingdom built on work, faith, and humility." The three became the king's closest advisors, and together they ruled with wisdom, each complementing the strengths of the other. As Micah finished his tale, the three men were silent, each lost in his own thoughts. "Is this why you waited for us?" Thomas finally asked. "To tell us a story?" Micah smiled. "Not just a story, Thomas, a lesson. You see, each of you carries a gift." "What gift?" Elias asked, his tone bitter. "We have nothing." Micah shook his head. "You have everything. Thomas, your hands were made for labor, but you must remember that it is God who brings the harvest, not the sweat of your brow alone. Elias, your heart was made for trust, but you must learn to trust in Him above all. And Simeon, your mind was made for leadership, but you must first lead with humility, knowing that all authority is given by God." The three men looked at each other, their burdens feeling strangely lighter. "And what about you?" Simeon asked. "What is your gift?" Micah's smile deepened. "I am but a messenger. My gift is to remind you of His promises." With that, the old man stood, his frail body seeming stronger than before. "Now go," he said. "Your journey is not yet over, but you will not walk it alone. Remember what you have learned here, and trust in His plan." The three men watched as Micah walked away, disappearing over the horizon. They stood in silence for a long time before finally turning back to the road. As they walked, the sun seemed a little less harsh, and the path a little less steep. And though their burdens were still there, they carried them differently, knowing now that they were not alone. The tale ends here, not with riches or glory, but with a truth that endures. Faith, work, and humility are the foundation of any journey worth taking. And as the three men continued their path, they realized that the road they walked was not just one of earth and stone, but one that led closer to God.